Hey everyone, welcome to the very first episode of the Social Media Lab live here in 2021. Glad you come over here to watch as we're getting this show started. And did you know that there are nearly, and probably even over now, 800,000 franchise establishments just right here in the United States? I didn't know there was that many. It's a big, big number. And you'll recognize some of the top franchises that are around our country and around the globe. People like McDonald's, Kentucky Fried Chicken, the Marriott, Pizza Hut. The list goes on and on and on. And I actually worked for a couple of pizza franchises, CC's Pizza, by the way. Worked for them a couple of times as a manager, so I'm very familiar with the franchise model and how it works. And they've become so popular because it's a way to kind of jumpstart and set up a profitable, established business setup with a brand that everybody recognizes, an infrastructure, and a team that knows what works and what doesn't work. So it's really, really popular, especially here in the United States. But just like your local real estate office, franchises need help with marketing. They need help figuring out social media because it is different in every location, even within their city and their town. They need help. And that's where you, the social media manager, the agency owner, that's where you come into play. You're the expert that can help these franchises do better with their social media. But how do you find them? How do you land those gigs? And then what do you do once you do land them? We're going to talk about that today with my special guest, Eddie Garrison, who runs social media for a large franchise. And we're going to pick his brain a little bit and find out what he's done and what he's doing with franchise marketing. So stick around. It's the Social Media Lab Live.
Are you ready to use science to bust some myths in the social media ecosystem? Welcome to the Social Media Lab Live, brought to you by Agorapulse, where our social media scientists experiment on real accounts to crack the code on social media success for your business. Now your hosts, Scott Ayers.
Hello, everyone. I am Scott Ayers, the content scientist here at the Social Media Lab, powered by Agorapulse, and it's good to see each and every one of you here. Our goal here at the Social Media Lab Live is to bust those myths, the rumors, and the stories of social media marketing with science. And during that time, we also like to interview lots of our friends in marketing to kind of get their expertise and talk about data related to social media. So this is the very first episode of 2021 for the Social Media Lab Live, and I'm excited to kind of get back into that routine. I don't know about you. I was off for 2 weeks and ate too much and sat around too much. Kept saying, I'm going to go to the gym every day. And that just simply did not happen for me. I think I went 2 or 3 times. The rest I'm like, no, I'm just going to chill out and watch football or hang out and do nothing. But hopefully you've had a good holiday season. We're kind of saying goodbye or good riddance to 2020, and we're on to 2021. And I am curious, though, this will be an interesting conversation. Question of the day is, what is one of your New Year's resolutions? Do you have any New Year's resolutions? Maybe you don't. I would love for you to pop into the comments wherever you're watching what one of your New Year's resolutions is. I think it'd be kind of fun to see what everybody's talking about. Maybe we'll hold you accountable to them. I'm going to check out the chat and see what everybody's saying. For me, I've never been a big resolutions guy. I think probably because I know I'll fail at them, and I don't want that guilt on December 31st that I didn't do it. So I typically don't do New Year's resolutions, but I will know for me, one of the things that I have set out this year is to read 20 books. That's one of my goals, to read 20 books. And my book's in I think I posted a picture on social here recently, the books I've read. I've read some marketing books. Everybody Writes from Ann Handley. I read it every year, early in the year. I'll read that one again this year. And then a bunch of them are Christian religious-based theology books. I really dive into those quite a bit. So I want to see what some people are saying. Brad says, let's get this party started. Kudos to you, Brad, for hopping over here and watching. Deb Mitchell, our community manager at Agorapulse, appreciate you hopping over here and getting into the show. Justin says, I feel like it's been 40 years since I've seen one of these. Yeah, it's been a good 2 weeks. I did one the week before Christmas. Jennifer Watson, our social media manager, was my final guest of the year. on that show. So yeah, it was great to get over there. Justin also says, eat grilled cheese. I haven't had it in a while. So that's his New Year's resolution, is to eat a grilled cheese. So, I mean, pop open those. Do you use the American singles, like the cheap ones, or do you buy like good cheddar cheese, or is it shredded? Everybody has a little bit different taste when it comes to that. So let me know in the comments, what you've done for New Year's resolutions. I think it'd be fun to find that out and see what each of you guys are doing, and kind of what you're kicking around over there. I do want to remind you that we are a part of Agora Pulse. If you haven't tried Agora Pulse basically what we do a lot of things, but we help you schedule your content, we help you organize your content, we help you manage your teams, we help you manage mentions and messages and all that good stuff. And I don't do it justice saying about it, so watch this video.
Agora Pulse provides your team with all the social media management tools your brand needs. Start optimizing engagement of posts with saved hashtags, post preview, and customized video thumbnails. Have full control over your incoming conversations with date pickers, filters, and automation rules, so that you don't have to worry about missing important messages. Maximize the ROI of your content strategy. Find out instantly which of your posts are bringing in the most engagement and when you should be posting your best content. On a team, find out who's keeping on top of messages in your inbox. Get complete insight into your brand's publishing schedule. Oversee scheduled content with our workflow and shared calendar options. Agora Pulse offers support 24/7 with an average response time of 20 minutes. Keep your team's skill set strong with Social Media Management School and the Agora Pulse Academy, both absolutely free with your subscription. Find out why brands come to us and stay.
I feel like that video needs like a big boom, boom, like a big drum kick at the end of it or something. But yeah, shout out to Eric Fisher, who works for us and did the voiceover for that video. It's kind of a new video we've done. So yeah, if you haven't checked out Agora Pulse, go to agorapulse.com/live. That's a special link. You'll get a 28-day free trial to kick the tires, talk to our team, and they would love to help you out with all of your social media. So all that to say, and part of the thing, if you do live video, you're always testing stuff, and we know how the algorithm works a little bit. So I like to be a couple minutes in to the hour, so everybody's gotten their notifications before we dive into the content. And so hopefully now everybody's got a chance to kind of come over and watch it wherever they're watching the show. So I'm going to bring on my guest and my friend Eddie Garrison. If you don't know who Eddie is the owner of Clover Media Consulting, and brings over like a decade of sales marketing experience from a corporate level. He's well versed in complete project management, testing, implementing. He's a data geek and nerd. Just like me. Last time he was on one of my shows, he actually had orange hair on.
I did,
which was a lot of fun. So Eddie, thanks for hopping on the very first episode of Social Media Lab Live with me this year.
It's an honor, man. Thanks for reaching out.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this show quite a bit, to be honest with you. And here's why. I think just for one, it's a topic I don't hear a lot of people talk about.
Right.
Two, I worked for, like I mentioned when we opened, I worked for CiCi's Pizza for a number of years as the general manager.
The best pizza value anywhere.
There you go. It used to be $2.99 all you can eat buffet. Man, it was $3.24 or $3.25. I think it was every time, and we knew what it was. $3.25 back in the 90s. And then I worked for another large franchise it was Winmar. So they own like 75 locations around the South. And so I was one of the general managers of the store in Houston. So I understand the franchise model. And a lot of people don't, but franchises are such a great setup for people to get started. They don't have to come up with branding.
Right.
They don't have to figure out, how to do A and B and all this stuff. They kind of just give it to you. They select your location. They help make your store or whatever it is look the same. That way, if you walk into any McDonald's, and McDonald's really started this, you walk into any McDonald's around the world almost, they pretty much look the same. The same experience. The burger should taste about the same.
Yeah.
And that's the whole idea of franchises. And that's why I think they're such an interesting model for people to do. So, yeah. And so tell us a little bit before we kind of hop into what we want to kind of dive into. What has happened to you recently and regarding franchises? I know you can't tell us the name, and I'm not going to ask you the name of the particular franchise unless you just want to kind of give us an idea. But how did that come to fruition, and kind of how many locations are you managing, all that kind of good stuff?
Right. So how it came to fruition was I actually had a friend very similar to you, having friends on all the time and marketing friends. And I had her on my show. And after the show, she was like, hey, I've got an opportunity upcoming that I might need your help on. And funny enough, it actually started out not being social media management. For those that don't know, I actually come from a graphic design background. I went to college and graduated college with graphic design degrees. And she was reaching out to me for graphic design help for this particular franchise that she potentially was going to have come on. So it kind of kicked the tires like that. It kind of lit the fires a little bit. And a couple of days goes by and she reaches back out. She goes, hey, I've got another opportunity with this same people. What would it take for you to come on board and do their social media management as well? So obviously I went down, my checklist and go, okay, what's going to be involved? How many pieces of content are we going to have to create? How many posts are we going to have to doing, a week, a month, a year, the basic checklist that I go down. And then she came back to this and was like, hey, I just need a price. And, we, without disclosing any of that information, we went back and forth on that. And, I mean, not like negotiating, with just email exchanges and things of that nature. And she goes, yeah, well, they're still mulling it over because they were still actually with another agency. And they had to, be released from that contract at the end. And once they did that, we got the green light to go. And it's been 130 miles an hour head first into the deep end ever since.
Now, are you doing this on your own? Is it pretty much your one man band, or do you have other employees? Well, how does that work for you?
I'm a one man show, man.
Okay. A lot of people are, and if you can pull it off, that's great. I don't know with the amount of locations you're doing. I think I would have a hard time.
I forgot to answer that question. This particular franchise that I'm working with now has 23 locations across North America.
That's a lot. That's a lot just to deal. So basically, if you think about that, that's 23 individual clients.
Correct.
If you were to go out there and try to find those businesses, you've got 23 of them just boom right there in one bang.
Yeah, and when you look at it, you go, 23 sounds like a lot, but you have to double that because they have Facebook and Instagram. So just for this one customer, I'm managing 46 social media profiles.
Pretty impressive, and I'm really happy for you. I remember when you told me you got it. I was like, this is gonna be fun to watch Eddie do this and kind of I was like, I'm ready to pick your brain about this.
Yeah, we've been going full tilt since October with them, so I've got a lot of I guess data because that's what it is basically.
Yeah, exactly. And we know too, like what I said when we started, we were not going to ask Eddie the name or anything like that because he can't, for disclosure purposes and stuff, and some of the data he can't give up. But you're going to kind of help us walk through some things about the science, if you will, of running social media for a franchise. And the first thing I kind of wanted to kick this off is, how do you land those clients? I know you were in a little different situation where someone needed some work done. And so that was one way perhaps, but tell us maybe some ways that you've done in the past or you would recommend if you want to find these big franchise clients like this.
Right. Yeah. Just so what you alluded to, actually, this is done under somebody else's name. So I'm basically a white label or a contract provider for them, if you will. So one of the first things is just to reach out to people that you already know that might be a little bit bigger than you. Don't be intimidated. If you've spoken with them before, the dialogue is already there. They obviously know who you are and know your work because one, they've either reached out to you before to inquire maybe about, bringing you on to help with a certain service here or certain service there. So go ahead and open up those channels of dialogue with people that you already know that maybe are working with customers that are a little bit bigger than you think you personally or your agency can go after. Number two is honestly ask them. right? I don't care if it's like a Chick-fil-A franchise in your hometown, a Walk-On's, even a McDonald's. Well, probably not McDonald's, but if there's like a regionalized franchise in your area, do not be afraid to call on them, walk into their corporate offices, because they're usually going to have one in that area, and go, you know what? Hi, my name is Scott Ayers. I have this agency. I'm looking to see if you guys need any help with digital marketing, social media management, video production, photography, because you never know what they have or what they're actually in need of, or even better yet, what they don't like about the people that they're already doing business with. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say you should submarine other agencies, because I'm not saying that at all. But, a lot of people sometimes are just looking for a change, or they don't publicly state that they have an issue or they have a problem or a pain point that they need help on. And they're waiting for people to proactively come to them so they can look at you and see what you've done, look at your track record, and make a decision there. Because when you start talking about franchises, there's a level of like a chain of command that has to go. So it's not like you're walking into a mom and pop shop where the guy's going to own the pizza shop and he can make the decision right there. It's got to go up a ladder, a chain of command. Yeah. So there's a big difference between marketing yourself to the local community and marketing yourself to potentially a national or a global community.
Yeah, and I think a good way too, like when I go to say, and you see mainly franchise, at least I do, franchise that are restaurants. Mm-hmm. So many restaurants that you go, especially if they've got any sort of national branding, they're usually some sort of franchise. Look at the door when you walk in or you drive up. It'll say who the franchise is typically. Yep. Go look those people up and go, hey, I am here in, Orlando, and I see you are as well. You can look them up, see how many locations they got. You got XYZ locations. I'd love to help you out and talk about your marketing and blah, blah, blah.
I've done it literally where I was sitting in the restaurant eating, saw the person's name on the door, and started looking them up on social media right then.
Yeah, and that's the way to do it. I mean, because you go from, just one client's nice enough, but if that franchisee, and most franchisees, except for outside of, this is a little fun fact that I've learned over the years about Chick-fil-A. I think you mentioned Chick-fil-A a minute ago. Yeah. Chick-fil-A, typically, they don't actually call them franchises. No. They're partners. And it's like $1 million investment. It's a bit, or you got to at least have a whole lot of cash in your bank. But they typically only let most of those guys have one location, and that's it. Some of them will have two if they're in a smaller market, like where I'm at. It's a smaller market, so they have two. But most of them only have one, which is a really interesting, unique thing.
And not to get way off topic, but you brought up Chick-fil-A, and I think this is still true. You and I right now could not go buy one because we don't work there. You actually have had to work at a location before you can actually apply for a franchise.
Yeah, you have to be there for a couple of years and know the business. And you've got, as the partner, you actually have to run it. You can't just hire general managers like our franchisees did. Right. You've actually got to be in there in the chicken, elbow deep, and figuring out the whole thing. So yeah. Yep. So anyway, so that's a couple of ways of how to land a franchise. It's very similar to any other brand you might go after, but it's just that potential is so much greater, because immediately, I think for you, like what I'm excited about for you, Eddie, is, let's fast forward 6 months to a year. You got this on your resume now that you've run social media for 23 locations of XYZ company. Man, that really is leverage to other franchises that are out there. And saying, hey, you know what? I can handle this. I can handle yours.
Right. And that's actually a good segue into kind of going back to how you do this. You need to have some kind of media kit or a pitch kit, if you will, put together, right? That's outlining who you don't get into the weeds, make it pretty high level and say, this is who I am. This is my company. This is what we offer. This is who we've done it for. This is the results that we came up with. And for any time that you can have a case study or any kind of data to back it up, and it doesn't have to be on their level, right? If you're going after a franchise, it doesn't necessarily have to be on a global level. Give them real, honest numbers of what you've helped people do, and prove to them that you solved a pain point at a local level, that this stuff is scalable and you know what you're talking about. But these guys, they're on the fly. These executives, they don't have 45 minutes to go through, a 15-page ad for yourself. Make it very succinct. If you can say it in 7 words, do not say it in 10. Make it very easily understandable and give them a clear call to action at the end to get back to you, just because of how powerful the data and everything that you went over is.
Very, very true. And I see some comments coming in over here. Justin says, ask. Yeah. If you don't ask, you never know.
Worst thing they can say is no.
And Deb's got a great question. Deb, we're going to get to your question actually here in a bit about managing content and all that sort of stuff. And Justin did say something. I guess he's commenting about Chick-fil-A, that he wants another one in his town. And so I know in our area, the guy who has 2 Chick-fil-A locations actually has a food truck. And so it's what they do. It's actually I live in a small town, and we're not big enough for a Chick-fil-A. And so he goes around a different area every day during the week. And there's a small town, 10, 15,000 people mainly or less.
Is that the mark of a big town, a Chick-fil-A?
Yeah, I think so. I think you got to have they require a certain amount of people.
They do. Yeah.
But their food truck is kind of, my kids die on Wednesday. Wednesdays is usually Chick-fil-A day at our house because they know the food truck's in town.
Nice.
We'll go over there. So if you're just hopping on, I'm talking to Eddie Garrison. We're talking all about the science of managing and running social media for franchises and franchisees. And so we just talked about how to land franchise clients. Now we've landed them. We won't talk about what to charge and stuff because I think that's so dependent on that particular market and what you're doing and delivering. That's a whole other show and conversation that perhaps we could have, and maybe you can ask Eddie and reach out to Eddie and he can kind of consult you on that perhaps. But we've already landed them. We've signed the contract. How do we set expectations for these clients? Because there's a lot of they have a lot of locations. They have a lot of stuff coming in. How do you set those expectations for them?
So one of the first things that happens when you get a larger customer like this, especially franchises, is they are going to have basically a company-wide meeting where it's going to be the CEO, the vice presidents, the internal marketing team if they have one, the internal art department if they have one, and typically a representative from every franchise location that's out there. Now, what we typically call this is a kickoff meeting to kind of introduce ourselves to, who we are, what we're going to be doing, and kind of an overview of how the flow is going to go on. Because a lot of these guys that own these franchises, they don't do anything with the social media. They don't know anything about it. They know they've got a Facebook page and an Instagram page, and somebody just does it, right? So let's just say that you had a franchise of 10, just to make the math simple. 8 of them have no idea what goes on Facebook and Instagram. 2 of them want to know every single thing, will look at every post, and they will read every single word that you post on there. So the first thing that's going to happen is you're going to have a kickoff meeting. Once that's there, you like I said, you kind of say what you're going to do, who you are, how you're going to be doing it. And that flows into another meeting, and that's going to be with the key internal players. So usually that's going to be somebody like me, the social media manager, the internal marketing team, the internal art team, and usually somebody pretty high up on the corporate side of the franchises, because that's the ones that are going to be making the overall decisions on how the content should look, what it needs to say, the context that needs to be, any kind of branding guidelines that goes on. That's going to be where that meeting comes into play. Once you have all that figured out, then you actually go into, okay, let's do an internal audit to see what has been working, and more importantly, what has not been working for the franchises. Because you have to take a lot into consideration when you're talking about multiple franchises in multiple geographic areas, not only just in the United States or maybe Canada or even perhaps Europe or the world, but just different time zones, different local places, right? Because what works in Florida may not work for an environment in, say, Washington State. We don't get snow in Florida. They get a lot of snow in the Northwest.
Right.
So you have to take all this into consideration. So these are going to kind of be some of the workflows early on that you try to pin down to say, okay, well, when we post this in Florida, we have to come up with something different in Washington.
Yeah, I would think even too, like, let's think, especially because we're in the U.S. and we, it is what it is. I mean, different political climates in each of those areas. So you probably got to be careful what you say there and what's going on. Like Georgia was crazy with election stuff yesterday.
Right.
Probably if I was running social media for somebody in Georgia, I probably would have laid off yesterday just to let all that stuff get out of the feeds and then kind of go back. So you kind of have to know that.
Yeah. And then another thing that you have to come into play too is if you're talking about international customers, they may spell something differently than you do. So when you're crafting your content, you have to be cognizant of, okay, this is being posted in Canada, so it has to be spelled CENTRE, not CENTER.
Or like the favor with the OUR.
OURs.
favorite. Yeah.
And then, you have to look at time zones. So if you're looking to post something at, say, 10:30 a.m., well, that needs to be 10:30 a.m. local time. So if you're scheduling your content out, and I'm on the East Coast, 10:30 a.m., but in California, that's 7:30 a.m. So you need to adjust yours. So when you post it for California, you're posting it at 2:30, not 10:30, because that's 10:30 their time, not 2:30 your time.
Very true. So anything else, like I'm playing around with Restream's thumbnail, so you'll have to forgive me while I'm in the live. I'm like, hey, I wasn't to play around a minute ago. I was like, I'm going to accidentally do this and you're going to be in the wrong spot.
I did see it in my peripheral, man. I just see the Logitech logo.
But it's fun to kind of just play around with everybody's that. So if y'all see me doing that, I'm playing around with the Restream's live studio. Yeah, but I do think when you get a client like that, any client, but especially one where you're doing 23 locations, like I'll keep going back to the CC's Pizza. I mean, they own like 70 something. They had 45 just in the Houston market, I think. So, I mean, that's a lot to take on, and expectations are going to have to be set in the beginning of your workload, of when you're going to get billed, or how you're going to get paid.
Exactly. And that's all laid out before you actually start diving into the content, right? So that's all hammering out before you have to worry about the workflow, where you're getting your digital assets from. Are you creating the imagery? Are they sending it to you? How are you getting that? Who is responsible for getting that to you? So there's a lot of infrastructure that's actually set up that is typically not there when you're dealing with, say, like a one-off local restaurant, something like that.
And you hope if these, if these franchisees they own more than one, they're a little more organized.
You would hope.
You would hope, not always, but you would hope. And sometimes franchisees just own one location, and that's it. So that's right. You would handle them probably like you would, for the most part, a typical restaurant. Let's say, I keep going back to restaurants because they're the most popular. Yeah. But I mean, you'd handle them like a regular restaurant owner, except they're going to have some very brand, specific, things they can and can't do. Yeah. You can't do this with the logo. You can't put this. You can't say that. You got to show the food in a certain way, and so you'll have to kind of know all that beforehand.
Yeah, and that's gone over, because typically, more often than not, obviously with major franchises, they have a brand guideline Bible basically that they're just going to send to you, and you just have to know it.
Well, as we kind of led into we talked about setting expectations, and we kind of talked about content a little bit. This is a different animal, like you just said. They're going to have some brand guidelines, but how do you go? And this will kind of answer, like Deb. I'd love to answer Deb's question in here at the same time. Can you explain how you manage the content workflow, post, where, all that kind of good stuff? What is content and running content and managing content look like when you're looking at more than one location for a franchise?
Right. So how we have found success in doing this is, okay, so we're at what's today, January 5th, 6th?
6th, yeah.
I've already got 90% of February's content calendar done. Right. We try to have the leading month's content calendar done by the middle of the previous month. So February's content calendar for this particular franchise will be done by January 15th. And the reason that we do that is because you're dealing with a franchise now, right? There, like I said in the beginning, there's multiple levels of approval that have to be met. I have to come up with the content calendar. They provide, I would say, 95% of the digital assets. So I don't have to worry about the photography, the video, or anything like that. It more comes down to the copywriting of it. Like, and I'm not saying I have to copyright anything, but what I'm trying to say is, people in the marketing world, when you write it, so when you see a Facebook post, the text there, that's just called copyright, right? So I have to come up with the copy, get that. I put it all into a content calendar that we're all able to view. So it goes basically through almost a 4-level approval process before it even gets scheduled into my scheduling software. So basically we do a post every other day. So we're looking at between 15 and 20 pieces of content for every single location per month. So it's going to say like Monday the 1st, 10:50 a.m., Facebook, here's this is the content that we're doing. Here's a hyperlink to the image or the video. Then underneath that, there's going to be one that says, Monday the 1st, Instagram, there's the copy. Obviously links don't work in there. There's another screenshot of the image that we're going to use. And then here's the hashtags that we're going to use. And then it just goes through the approval process. Once everybody has looked at it, given it the twice and fifth over, I then go in and start to schedule everything in the scheduling software that I use. So I try to typically do it a week at a time.
Right.
Because once you get into, like I said, I'm doing 46 pieces of content per day. So if I did it for the entire month, I would literally sit here for hours because I'm scheduling thousands of pieces of content. So I just do it in week blocks.
That's interesting. So, I mean, have you found so far, like you said, that you have to get it, 1, 2, or 3 touches on it? Is that going to be pretty normal for a franchise where you've got to get it, like the local franchisees got to get it approved by corporate?
Yep.
Let's say, is that pretty normal, you think?
Well, what you're typically gonna do is you're gonna deal directly with corporate. The franchises are gonna do what corporate says.
Okay.
They're just going to, because to put it into terms, I guess, corporate is the gospel, right? So whatever corporate says basically has to go. So there's some one-off instances if they're doing like a grand opening or something, or they have somebody famous coming. Yes, that's going to be kind of one-off content for that location. But 98% of the time, it's going to be corporate approved, and then it goes down to the franchises at that point.
So, I mean, how does that look though? So like your contract is, let's say, for example, your contract is with this one franchise, but then you've got to talk to marketing out there. Does that take is the process longer to get content approved? I mean,
yes.
You're talking about your schedule all the way through February.
Yep.
When did you get to do the ask and show, hey, here's the content I want to post in February?
Yeah. Well, that one is the deadline for that's the 15th.
Okay.
So in December, on December 15th, we got the entire January's content and calendar approved. Okay. So that's kind of how it works. We try to, and we're trying to lead up to even more than that. We're trying to do it a full month in advance. But right now, the middle of the month, the trailing month is for the next month.
Yeah. So that's something to think about too. And going back to the other earlier point of setting expectations. I mean, you're having to start working way ahead. So really, yes, keep that in mind when you're billing these franchises, that your work starts before stuff goes live.
Yeah.
And so don't just say, hey, we'll start posting tomorrow and that's when we start getting paid. No.
And then you have to also what that allows you to do is, because the particular franchise I'm working, they have a full art department, right? So I'm saying, okay, well, this particular type of video has been performing really, really well. We need to shoot more of that, but we need fresh. So you have to give them some lead time as well, because they have to, they got to get all their camera gear ready. They got to get the camera guy ready. They got to get the talent ready. They got to write a script. They got to do, a run of show. They got to do a screenshot. So, a shot list. So there's lead time that needs to be taken into consideration because you're working with a marketing or even a full-on art department as well.
Yeah, and I think here, this kind of leads into what Deb's asking here too. So like location X posts the same as location Z.
Yes.
Yes, for you. I wonder if that's the same for all franchises. Maybe they're a little bit different. Maybe it's like it was employee spotlight.
Employee spotlights are one thing, yeah. But when she's talking about that too, it becomes location specific only in the copy sense. So if you're talking about, so let's say you're talking about something that's in a warm climate, but then you also have a customer that's in a cold climate. So the copy and the imagery is going to be tweaked to reflect what's going on in that local community, even though it's the same. Like say you're pitching something that says, okay, well, we sell 4-wheelers, right? Yeah. Well, 4-wheelers in winter don't really work. So you maybe change that for snowmobiles, right? So you just take in the localization of it, but it's still done on a broad spectrum level.
Do you typically, now obviously time zones come into play, but
yes,
do you typically post at the same time for every location? So it's 5 o'clock here, it's 5 o'clock there.
Yeah.
Same for all, or you
not the same for all, like across the board, just because I go back and look at the analytics and go, okay, well, when we posted this at 10 in the morning, but then when we posted at 1 in the afternoon, it really didn't do well. So when we see this location, okay, it's going to be posted at say like 10:15 a.m. Right. But another location with the same content didn't perform until 1. So I'm going to post at 1 locally. And when I use these times, I'm talking about the local times to these franchises locations, not 1 where you're at.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to post something after hours or early in the morning for a local business.
Exactly.
Typically do as well because they're not open. It might, but you have to look at that and look at your analytics and kind of see, okay, is the audience on? And it depends on the franchise. Like if you're doing social media for a franchise that maybe is geared towards moms, so let's say like Gymboree, those kind of places, you need to know when those moms are on Facebook and Instagram and post where they're at. So kind of keep that in mind that every franchise is going to be different.
Exactly.
For sure. So yeah, I would imagine the content process is the most daunting part of this.
It is. And honestly, once like you get everything approved and the content calendar is good to go, you could turn your focus now into, start to scheduling the content. And then that's when the community management comes into play.
Now, do you do the community management for them, or,
Yes, I do.
You do? Okay. Cause I know some of your clients, you don't. So yeah, that's good. So how does that look? I mean, is that because did you get any training on how the voice of the franchise is? So you did. Okay. How did that look like? How did that work out?
So basically they have it's almost covered in the branding guidelines. It's just literally called community guidelines, right? For this particular franchise. And they give you the voice of their brand. We don't want to use words like this, and I'm not going to specify the words, but like that, you're reading these things and it says, okay, we don't want to use words like, and then there's a bracket, and then there's words listed that we are trying to avoid. Try not to use contractions. Try not to use improper grammar, because they're a very corporate-minded franchise, the one in particular I'm talking about. So they have a particular voice that they want to have done. So basically, 9 times out of 10, what I do is when someone is replying on Facebook, and I'm just going to use Facebook as an example, they're looking for like a quote or a cost of something. And typically we don't respond to that because obviously I don't know the work that's entailed in doing that. And they don't want the social media manager to do that. So what I do is I direct message them and say, hey, Scott, thank you so much for your interest in, insert product here. If you don't mind, I'd love to have one of our design consultants call you back. Would you please provide me with your contact and or email address to have them speak to your specific project's needs? I then go back and make sure to reply on the feed in Facebook to go, hi, Scott, please see your direct messages for more details. Thank you. And it pulls it offline because you don't want to have these quotes and estimates underneath, like say a sponsored ad, because people are going to be like, oh my God, I can't believe they're charging that much. Or, oh my God, somebody else got it for cheaper. So we try to pull those things offline, but still communicate with them in a very fast manner.
Yeah, I think that's got to be the most, especially if you got a franchise. Let's use the McDonald's. I know they've got their own marketing department that does everything. Right. They may subcontract it out. Who knows? But yeah, I mean, the amount of comments and stuff sometimes you probably have to deal with. It could be a full-time job just managing the community stuff. So yeah, definitely know the voice of that franchise. If you're a Wendy's, Wendy's has got a, I know they do all their own social, but they got a kind of a fun sort of way they talk. So you kind of have to know that. And I think that's good. And that, again, you've gone back twice now talking about content and the expectations you set when you started and you agreed on a contract. That's going to be imperative that everything, because you don't want to walk in 2 months later and they go, oh, by the way, you can't do that. You're fired.
And one of the things that you need to be able to convey as a social media manager is you're not a salesperson. You are not there to generate sales for them.
Right.
You are there to give them a social media presence and direct them to sales departments or websites or landing pages or whatnot. So you need to be able to make sure you set that expectation on day one, minute one of the first meeting you have. Because a lot of people want to lump in social media with sales, and we are not salesmen.
Yeah, that applies, I think, to everybody. Even not even franchise stuff. Even for me personally, I don't sell. I do talk about our product, and I can help as much as I can. But I'm not the expert on what those clients need. Now I'll divert them to the right people, so I don't mess it up and stick my foot in my mouth.
Now, I mean, we push leads to who needs to be pushed to. So like if a lead comes in to a franchise in, say, California, I take a screen grab of all the information that I was supplied to. I then email them and, just big bold text and it says social media lead. And I say, hi team, here is a lead that came in via Facebook, see attached, boom, and it's gone. It's out of my hands.
Very cool. All right. So we're going to get on to the next thing we want to talk about.
Genius. No.
Like that. I did that the last time you were on the show. So I had to put that on there again just to see if you were paying attention. And you know what the hardest thing is? Spelling the word genius. I always get it wrong. I don't know why. I always have to Google it to make sure I get it right so I don't look like an idiot when I'm spelling the word genius. So let's get into this. And Deb has a question too that'll relate to this. Is the good, the bad, and the ugly. I mean, obviously you're not going to talk about this specific franchise perhaps, but maybe like what is some of the great things that have happened and you see happening, and what is some of the stuff where you're like, holy crap, I didn't know this was going to come into play, or it's a lot more work than I expected, that sort of stuff. What are your thoughts here on this?
I love that. So leave that up, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So the good is once you really get into a flow of things, the process and the fun that it actually is because you're not really relying so much on you creating the content as much as you are doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. And that's being basically the voice of the franchise, right? So social media marketing isn't just about contenting and leaving it up there. It's not about posting and ghosting, right? You're crafting this content to be engaging, emotional, educational, and entertaining, right? That's what you want people to feel. That when people feel that, that's when they engage, and that's when they comment, and that's when they ask questions. So that's really what they're paying you to do, is to nurture these people into believing, not really believing, but nurturing these people into the thought process of, yes, this is something I want, or this is something that I need. So once you really get into a good flow and how the content is going to come to you, and then you start to really embrace the voice of it, you get to have a lot of fun with it, because I've got to meet quite a few interesting people, commenting and engaging with them off platform, obviously, because that's what you want to try to do, is get it off quickly and get it to whomever it needs to be. So that's the good portion of it. The bad, good thing I'm not naming the franchise. The bad is, and I would never badmouth them, because they are not a bad franchise whatsoever. I quite enjoy working with them. The bad is a lot of franchise, and it is not just to this franchise. You're going to find this with any franchise level, is it's micromanaged, right? Yeah. So if you're just working with the one pizza shop, they're pretty much going to give you full run of what you think and what you know, and you're supposed to be the expert, so they're just going to let you run with it. When you work with somebody that's a corporate level, and then the franchises, there is a lot of different levels that go into it. So it's not like you come up with a content calendar, give it to them, and that they're just going to be, oh, great. That's not how it works. So, you're going to have one person that looks at it, and they're going to have their edits and thoughts. They're going to have another person that looks at it. They're going to have their edits and thoughts. And then it's going to go to the head honcho sometimes, and then they're going to have their interjections. So the bad part is it's the process of getting the content approved takes a lot longer than you probably would even think or know.
Yeah. That's probably tough. I would think that's the toughest part, is just
the ugly is when something just goes terribly wrong. Like you misspell some words, or you use the wrong image for the wrong product, but you're talking about one product and it's another, and you've already scheduled it, and it's gone out to all 46 or 100 accounts, or how many you're managing. No one caught it. You get an email at 10:30, 11:30 at night going, that's the wrong image. We have to change it now.
But hopefully you had them sign off on that, so that goes back to them. So.
You still have to change it.
Yeah, you still have to change it, but yay, I got it approved.
You still have to change it. And then you never know, and I can kind of see one of Deb's questions over there, is when something really terrible happens that's out of your control.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question here. I mean, how do you handle crisis management for franchises? Like the lockdowns, like some areas there's lockdowns, or there's a national disaster, a tornado hits, or there's a mass shooting. You have to make, and a lot of times this isn't your decision. This comes down from a corporate level. You can, insert your own expertise on, knowledge base of what you've done in the past for other customers. But usually that's going to come from a corporate level, and they're going to be either going to make one or two decisions. There's no gray area in this that I've ever seen when it comes to crisis management with something out of your control. They're either going to present a united front across all of their locations, not just say that it happened in Texas, so the location in New Jersey doesn't care about it, because that's incorrect. That's not the way it needs to be done, or nothing is going to be said about it. There is no gray area. It's either going to be one or the other. And have you run into that yet with this franchise?
No, I haven't. No.
Hopefully you won't.
Thankfully.
hopefully you definitely won't.
Which is, and it almost came to fruition, because the franchise that I'm working for is actually expanding. And one of the locations they're expanding to, I can say this, is in Nashville, Tennessee. And then that RV bomb went off in Nashville, Tennessee. So we would have had to have dealt with that if they were open, because they were actually I won't say quite close, but they were in a 5-mile radius of where that occurred.
Yeah. Nashville really isn't that big when you think about it, as far as the epicenter of it's all right there down Broadway and stuff. So yeah, definitely. So very cool stuff.
There's no gray area there. Honestly, it's either going to be one or the other. There's typically nothing else going on there.
So this was expectations kind of, but we wanted to end this talking about data, of course.
Yes.
What kind of data have you seen what data do franchisees want to see from you, the social media managers running all their social?
One of the biggest
How do you
things.
deliver that to them? That would be the other.
Yeah, well, I have actually quite a lot to talk about here on this one. The biggest thing is when you're giving them the data at the end of the month, at the end of the quarter, at the end of the half of the year, whatever you're reporting them for, you want to always be able to show some type of growth in the expectations that you've already set. Right. So if their expectation was to push more people to their website or push more people to this product landing page, you need to be able to show a direct correlation, and you have to work with their webmaster for that. But you can show a direct correlation to, yes, this many more website hits came directly from our Facebook content in December than it did in November, than it did in October, than it did in September. So you want to show this at least steady growth. Now they know there's going to be some peaks and valleys at the time, because no one can just have, exponential growth the entire time. That's just not a good expectation to set, and that's just not realistic. So you want to be able to show that particular growth, and hopefully there's no big valleys, but you want to show that, that particular growth that they're looking for. You also want to show that let me learn how to speak English here, that their social media presence is actually growing at the expectations that you said that it could. So if you said, you know what, we've worked with franchises in the past and we have no problem saying that, every month we've seen a 5 to 10% increase in your engagement rate. We've seen 5 to 10% increase in your reach, your overall reach, your audience, the audience that you're going after, because anybody can go out and buy followers. That's just a blackball. You shouldn't do that. You want to grow this organically. Also, you want to show them what type of content is performing good. And I want to talk a little bit about that here in a minute when we get into some actual numbers. But all this is set in the beginning. You have to set these expectations, and don't, what you need to and everyone's heard it before, you need to under promise and over deliver, right? So if you know that in the past, the franchises you've worked with have seen a 10% growth rate, say that you're going to say, oh, you know what? Well, we typically see 5, maybe 6, up to 7% growth rate. And then when you start to show them the 10 and 12 and the 15, they're like, wow, we're already outperforming who they worked with last time. Another good thing that you need to set in the beginning is the benchmark numbers you're going to use. If you don't have a benchmark number, it's going to be near impossible to show any kind of sustainable growth or set an expectation. Now, is that, say, when you take over the franchise's social media management, is the first month, the first quarter, whatever you put in there, is that going to be the benchmark? That's probably a good way to do it, because you don't want to benchmark yourself against somebody else, because somebody else doesn't matter anymore. They're not around anymore. You're the company. You're now the face of this franchise because you're their social media manager. So maybe take the first month of growth and just numbers and go, okay, this is my benchmark. So when you look at it in January, that's going to be your benchmark. Come February, did you grow? Come March, you still compare it to January. Don't compare it to February, because that's not your baseline. Your benchmark is January, because that's when you took over. That's when you started to post your content and implement your strategy. Then you look at your analytics and tweak your content calendar away from that benchmark, right? So your benchmark is always going to be what you set it at. And then 6 months down the line, you're still comparing it to that first month's benchmark to go, look at this. We've grown 27% since January. So the expectations need to be set then. You need to know what your benchmarks are going to be to compare everything else, especially data-driven, as you work with the company moving forward.
Now, when do you move the goalposts? Like, okay, you got that benchmark. At what point they go, okay, we know now we're crushing that, so we've got to move forward. Now we got to grow from there, because you don't always maybe compare to a year ago.
Yeah.
Do you typically want to move that a little bit?
I like quarterly, because that's just how most businesses work anyway. When you're setting up your own annual, goals and objectives and, actions and accountability, this is what I do. I mean, I do it quarterly, right? So if I have a year goal to say, we need to take our engagement rate from 10% to 20% by the end of the year. So if I look at it in January and we're at 10%, and then April 1st comes around, okay, we've moved up to 14%, 15%. Great. We're working towards that. So I try to set the overall goal of this is what we're going to shoot for at the end of the year. So I bring the goalpost back, really. I don't actually move it forward. I set the goalpost at the 100-yard mark. And then at the end of the first quarter, I'm like, okay, wow, we kicked it to the 20. Cool. Then I look in Q2. Okay, we were at the 50-yard line, which is perfect. So the goalpost actually comes back, and then you try to get to the goalpost and you try to get to the goalpost. And ultimately, you do want to score the touchdown at the end of the year from that goal that you set.
Right. And you kind of talked about, I don't think you got into this, but you deliver it every quarter. That's typically what you do. Is it an email? Is it a presentation?
Oh, actually, with this franchise, I do weekly, monthly, and quarterly reports.
Okay. So I mean, I would assume a bigger corporation is going to want a little bit more than, say, a local restaurant that's owned by one person.
Yeah. So with the franchise that I'm working with right now, the way the reporting works is, and I'm just going to use monthly reporting because weekly, I don't really want to dive into that. Right. Monthly reporting is we do the month, and then we do the month compared to the benchmark for Facebook and Instagram. So you'll get one that just shows the overall numbers and everything that happened for the month of, say, December. And then we'll look at it from December from the previous benchmark whenever we started, which was October. So it would say you would show the variations and the growth from October to December of that year. So they'll get 4 reports. So they'll get 4 reports a month.
And how are you delivering those?
Just an email.
Just an email, like spreadsheet?
No. I know that this show is by Agorapulse, but I use Hootsuite, and they have a reporting system in there.
So report through whatever system you're using.
Yeah,
you send it through them. Okay, I don't know if you made your own custom one.
I customize the report in the scheduling software.
And I like what Justin data can change minds for sure. It definitely does. They make you know what you're doing. And then Brad asked a question here, and Brad, of course, runs his own agency as well.
Yep.
And does social media. What about tracking engagement and growth to sales? Are you ever able to do that?
I set the expectations in the beginning that I have nothing to do with the sales. Whatever they do with the information that I pass along from social media is on their own end. So if they're converting those sales, good on them. To me, the growth compared to their sales is going to be the engagement from the content. The more engagement and the more people reach out for quotes and estimates, the more sales they're probably going to close, because the sheer number, it's just math, right? If in the beginning, if they're only getting 100 a month, and then after the first quarter, they're getting 300, estimates a month. If they have a close rate of 20%, 20% of 300 is greater than 20% of 100. So their sales department better be doing that, because I certainly don't work for their sales department.
No, but I guess part of that would be, all right, we saw that our engagement during this month led to more leads, more sales. What did we do?
Right.
You want to compare that to go, okay, let's do that.
Yes.
Or vice versa.
Yes. And I track that myself, actually, and I just started doing that. That actually wasn't an expectation that was set in the beginning. But I saw the number of leads that were coming in from social media. So I just created my own spreadsheet report. And since October, they are exponentially rising, the amount of leads that come in. So
yeah, and Brad says he was hoping you would say that. So, I remember, and this isn't franchise stuff, but I try when I moved back to the small town I got approached by a newspaper. There's still newspapers in small towns, and they don't understand social media. And the owner wanted me to do social media for him. I said, all right, cool. So I gave him a presentation, talked about it. He said, all right, well, I'm only going to pay you a commission off of sales. No, I said, all right, see you later, bud. That's not how it worked. It wasn't even lunch. I think I got a glass of water in his office. Again, it was a newspaper, remember?
Right.
And so, you got to have those expectations that, social media managers should not be responsible for sales. We are trying to get leads. We are trying to drive engagement and awareness and all those sort of stuff. But you can't.
Most people don't understand that when they look to have a successful social media presence, they need to work from their either brick and mortar store backwards or their website backwards. If your UX on your website stinks and you're pushing all these leads from social media and you're not converting, it's not the social media's fault. It's your website's fault. However, your lead intake and however you're handling that, if you don't know how to do that when all these leads start to come in from social media, you can't look and say that your social media was a failure. It's not that. The pinch point and the bottleneck becomes how you're nurturing those leads once you get them to wherever you're getting them to.
Very true. Anything else about data related to franchises?
Yes.
You got more.
I
All right.
do.
All
And
right.
this was incredibly surprising to me because it is the only time that I've actually ever seen this. And I'm going to compare platforms, right? So they have Facebook and Instagram. If we post the same video to Facebook that we do Instagram, same day, same time, same video, same copy, same everything, it's incredible. I'm just going to use one of their Facebook pages as an example. So one of their Facebook pages has, I think, like 25,000 followers on it. That video may see 150, maybe 300 views. Go to their Instagram page that has 5,000 followers. That video will get 2,000 views. Now, on the flip side, when you post a static image on Instagram, it may get 15, 20 likes. Facebook, it's getting 3,000 reach and 57 likes and 20 comments. It's amazing. It's usually the exact opposite.
Yeah, you would think it would be. I mean, maybe it's just the
But it's
market.
not for them. It's video kills it for them on Instagram, and it's deaf on Facebook.
That is
Still
so-
images rock on Facebook, and it falls on deaf ears on Instagram.
And your other clients is typically the other way around.
It
Right?
is 100% the other way around.
Yeah, so that's the, but you wouldn't know that if you hadn't looked at data. Now, did they know that
Oh
beforehand?
yeah, I tell them.
Did they know that before you started to see it?
No.
So it was something you had to kind of train them on or change them.
Yeah,
on.
truth be told, they didn't really have any kind of plan in place. They had never really, they had a content calendar kind of, but they didn't really stick with it. And they were trying to do too many of this. Oh, well, we saw this worked for some completely different industry. So they tried to do something similar. And so they kind of got caught up in like, oh, well, I read this article and the best practice says we have to post this. But that doesn't work for you.
Right.
I mean, just look at your analytics. It literally says it does not work.
That's funny. Well, I appreciate you kind of diving into all these questions and talking. I think we could probably talk about this. This is such an interesting topic, and maybe we need to talk about it some more because I know our head of sales, Jenny Brennan. We've talked about for one of our ideal clients and customers is franchises, of people who do social media for franchises, and like how do you go after them? How do you find, because they automatically boom, they've got 50, 60 accounts they've got to add to it. So, but it's a market that's hard to figure out and find them, but they're out there. You just got to go out there and grab that business and go. So now we're going to get to, I've done this with you so many times now. And I keep saying this is going to become a podcast, and I'm dang it. 2021, this show is going to, the 5 questions is going to become a podcast here shortly. I've got enough now. I think I can just be done with it, but I'm going to ask you short, weird ones today. All right. If you don't know what Poddex is, if you're watching,
Oh, I love those guys.
Poddex, Travis over there,
Yeah.
cool guy. I love the stuff that he's playing around with doing. He also does he has his own podcast therapy. He's got his own podcast groups talking about how to help people with podcasting. But he's got these little, I still have the physical decks of cards because I like the feel of it. I do have the app too, but I like the cards. So this is from the deck that's called What the Heck. So it's like real quick, real easy. So, all right, let's go. All right, 5 questions with Eddie Garrison. This one's funny. How many chickens would it take to kill an elephant?
32. That's my favorite number.
32. All right, here we go. Question number 2, Eddie Garrison, 5 questions. Toilet paper. Now, this one's controversial. Over or under?
All you got to do is look at the patent for it, and it goes over. So over.
Wait a minute. Over? I see. I'm an under guy.
Over.
I like under because I like to. I don't know. I pull too much off the other way. But it's interesting that you looked at the patent.
Yeah.
Who looked at the patent of toilet paper? Eddie Garrison has, evidently. All right. Question 3, 5 questions with Eddie Garrison from Clover Media. Is cereal soup? Why or why not?
No, it's cereal. They would call it soup if it was soup.
But you eat, like you do chicken noodle soup, it's the same kind of stuff. I see where that thought comes in.
Is
Think about, like,
pasta salad a salad? There's no lettuce.
Oh, yeah. I like what Justin said. You can't even find toilet paper. Well, in some places you can.
Oh, well.
All right. Question 4, 5 questions with Eddie Garrison. Back in high school, what was the strangest thing someone could find in your locker?
Do you really want me to answer that?
Go for it. Yeah.
Okay. So we had taken a field trip to New Orleans. And for those that don't know, I grew up in Pensacola, Florida, which is kind of northwest section of Florida. And we went over there to a science museum. And of course, we were, young kids. So we snuck out of the hotel and we went to Bourbon Street. And I found without naming it, let's call it a sexual toy device in a parking lot. And I brought it back and I forgot it was in my book bag. So I shoved it in my locker and it stayed there for 6 months.
Oh my gosh. So the drug dog found it later on. That's a unique one. I didn't expect that.
Yeah.
Mine would have been like a sandwich from a year and a half ago or something. All right. 5th question, 5 questions with Eddie Garrison. If humans came with a warning label, what would yours say?
Run.
Run.
That's one word.
Run. Video and stuff. Run. Yeah. Definitely cool. Well, I appreciate you answering those goofy questions for me.
Oh, that was fun. I love those.
You always coming on the show, and
yeah.
I like just putting you on camera and letting you go, and I'm like, God, I'm just gonna sit here for a minute.
I want to address one that I see off to the side here. And Deb says, "Are you working with other clients, or are this the only egg in your basket?" No, I have other customers as well.
Like, how many customers do you have in addition to this?
I have 10 other customers. I manage 78 social media profiles.
Oh, so there you go. So I hope that answers. Yeah. So Eddie's not just doing franchise; he also has individual clients.
Yep. And then I manage my own as well.
And you're all over the place. So you can go to clovermediaconsulting.com to find out a lot of stuff about Eddie and kind of see what he does. And hopefully, I think that links all your social and everything else you can do. Yeah. Eddie's got a really good group on Facebook. What's the name of the group?
The Digital Media Creator Academy.
Yeah, and it's a really good group. There's a lot of activity in it. People are always asking stuff. I think today there's a good, nice, heated, interesting conversation about Clubhouse.
Yeah.
So if you want to kind of weigh in, go over to the group with Eddie's group and let him know what you think about.
I see my phone out of the corner of my eye just blowing up with notifications from my Facebook group.
Everybody knows my opinion of Clubhouse already by now.
I
don't own iPhone, so I'm leaving it at that for this point. But yeah, so I appreciate hopping on the show, and I look forward to being on your show in the future, and you'll be back on ours. And
yeah, man, it was an honor to be the first one in 2021. So
there you go. All right, well, I appreciate you, Eddie.
Thanks, man.
And that's going to be it for this week's episode of the Social Media Lab Live. Remember, you can always go to agorapulselab.com and check out all of our past experiments. We're playing around with some new things here, a new look. We're actually in the middle of changing what this guy looks like. And hopefully we'll have him out in a couple months. He may look a little bit different, a little more like me. Perhaps is kind of the goal. Next week on the show, we're going to talk to Bruce Irving from Smart Pizza Marketing. So we're gonna have a pizza theme again. We talked a lot about CC's Pizza today. So we'll have Bruce on next week. I'm really interested in that one because my background in pizza management. So it'd be kind of fun to have him on and talk and geek out over all that stuff. So I appreciate everything you guys, all you guys coming over and commenting and being a part of the show. And we will see you next week.